when I hit live, does yours go live?
We're live.
We're live. Awesome. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on this show. God bless you for everything you've done and a wonderful show you just had. Definitely, I have the link to your channel in my description. So if anybody missed that show, please check it out. Amazing show. You actually answered some of my questions and I added on some more questions because of what you talked about. So this will be very fascinating.
Great. Well, Chris, thanks for having me too. Thank you so much. You've done such a great job of covering Sebastian with care and also with all your technical abilities. Thank you.
God bless you. All right. Well, let's get into it because, I usually do 90 minutes, but, depending on whenever you got to go, I usually kind of put a little extra just in case depending on the time. So thank you to everybody in the chat here. And let's get going. If you can, please hit that like button. And also, she is live on her channel. I've got the link in my description. So if you've got like 2 devices, you can watch my channel and her channel at the same time. It's a win-win. So from there, I want to reiterate, I have not used StreamYard in almost a year because I use a different streaming program. So everything's like, it's the same, but they've added a lot of stuff. So hopefully muscle memory comes back and we don't have too many issues. So I'm going to start playing. I usually play like a 1-minute recap of, his story. I'm sure 99% know his story, but just in case that 1% is not familiar with Sebastian Rogers' case, I'll play a clip and then we're going to get right into the questions.
Great.
All right, let's get going. All right, so I'm going to hit play on this.
1008 traffic court.
There we go.
Hi guys, this morning there was up in a 15-year-old girl talking to bed. We have right now 3 blonde hair back in my bed, but we're going to turn down. I was going to be wearing a black sweatshirt, black sweatpants. You know, those have a kind of autism. It's the first time it happened. I was going to be in the home before midnight. All the doors are locked at this time.
Informer. Sebastian Rogers is a 15-year-old autistic teenager who lives in Hendersonville, Tennessee. He was last seen Sunday night on February 25th by his mother, Katie Proudfoot. The next morning, on the 26th, his mother went to wake Rogers up and get him ready for school, but Rogers was nowhere to be seen. Sebastian Rogers was allegedly wearing a black sweatshirt, black sweatpants, his glasses, and his keychain flashlight. They also claimed that all of his shoes were accounted for, which means he is most likely barefoot. The Amber Alert and last sighting, which the date says February 26th.
Okay, so this is going to be my first question. I'll play it first, and then we'll ask you. I know you kind of addressed this in your live, which is kind of funny. I was talking about in chat, but I'll play it here. At least the first few questions I have, you kind of answered, but at least we can kind of address them just in case if anybody missed it.
On Monday, February 26th, an endangered child alert was issued for then 15-year-old Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. But on day 2, February 27th, the TBI announced that the child alert has been elevated to an Amber Alert. According to the article, it claims based on additional investigative information developed during the search. Here is the actual post from the TBI where at 3:28 p.m. Central Time on day 2, TBI announced it was elevating to the Amber Alert due to additional info found in his disappearance. Amber Alert are typically known to mean a child abduction, and in the case of Sebastian Rogers, it is still active as of this live show, nearly 11 months later.
So, first question, could you explain from your experience in the FBI what that means to this case with the Amber Alert, how they escalated it from day 1 on day 2? It seems like they found something and now have escalated it. And you kind of answered that, but if you could kind of go over that.
Yeah, no. So, Chris, on day one, I think initially law enforcement certainly thought they had a situation where Sebastian walked out and left. And that makes a lot of sense because, in our experience in law enforcement, I can tell you that when you have a missing child that is autistic, that is something you highly consider that they would have walked away. And then your number one focus is really any and all waterways, ponds, creeks, small rivers, anything in the area. That's your immediate focus. And of course, they're considered endangered because one, his age, and two, the fact that he was on the spectrum. On day two, when you see that change, to me, that means they were able to review video footage. This is what I believe truly.
Mm-hmm.
And that video footage, they believe they saw Sebastian Rogers. And at that point, they believed that somebody likely took him because he was then disappeared from that area. And they realized, there's no other way to get out of that area unless you're taken.
Yeah, there's really one way in, one way out, and not a lot of vehicles. Obviously, we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, clearly, from what they said, that there was something that they found. They obviously elaborate on it, but it was pretty vague. But they did find something that clearly escalated it to an Amber Alert. And usually, when we hear Amber Alert, we think child abduction. So that kind of answers the first two questions, which you kind of spoke about on your live, which was very interesting.
Chris,
Hearing a name of.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I wanted to add one quick thing.
Yes.
You do an Amber Alert. It's not, I don't know if people really understand the process, but having done these, you actually have to fill out paperwork and you have to explain why, in your estimation, you believe that it could be somebody that took them or was involved in an abduction. That's the whole point. Amber Hageman, who went missing from Arlington, Texas, that was a case my squad handled.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this goes way back to that. And essentially what happened was somebody snagged her, and then, of course, she was found deceased. No one has ever been charged with that crime, by the way. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
But they realized that if immediately people would have been alerted that maybe, because she was snatched, maybe somebody would have seen something. And so it's for that reason that they keep the parameters of an Amber Alert fairly, narrow. And in fact, if you look at the Michael Vaughn case, so many of us, we were pleading to the highest levels. And in fact, the Fruitland Police Department did too, saying you've got to make this an Amber Alert, which they never did, unfortunately, because a child at that age can't just disappear. They need assistance. And that's when you articulate that and write it out and get an Amber Alert.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Let's see. Put this back. Sorry, I'm still getting that muscle memory back from this. Okay. Now moving on to this, and we'll, like I said, we're going to start getting up to the lights and stuff and all that.
This poster.
So now this is regarding, and again, this is something you kind of answered. Like my first few questions you kind of talked about in your show, but again, we can just kind of elaborate just in case anybody missed it. But we got some very interesting stuff, I promise. Jen saw part of it on my show the other day. It's very exciting. And we'll shout out this creator when that comes up.
It says that the last time Rogers was seen was at around 10 p.m. on February 25th at his home in Hendersonville. But now most posters, including the FBI, claim Sebastian Rogers was last seen on February 26th near Stafford Court, which is the street Sebastian Rogers' home is on.
So, really, I know you've kind of answered this, but, there has been a lot of talk recently about, people are digging into, well, why, the mother says the last time she saw Sebastian basically is when he just went to bed around 9 or 10 p.m. And then now we have this, Amber Alert and the now citing February 26th with the FBI poster. And again, I know you kind of elaborated on that, but I don't know if you want to add into that, because I know we've basically kind of talked about that, but I find that very interesting. That's something that was very debated about recently on, why they have it now at February 26th, and it says, Stafford Court, which is obviously his street.
Yeah, people are speculating that this was some error and that law enforcement, this is typo. And I totally don't believe any of that. I think it's very purposeful, and I truly believe it was something seen on video.
Yeah.
And on that, when the FBI came out and posted a $50,000 reward, that again is something that takes so much approval, paperwork that has to be written. This is another reason why I know this is considered a criminal case. This isn't just a missing case. It's somebody walked out and nothing nefarious happened.
Right.
I know that in part based on that 50,000 reward. And so again, they are very specific and say the 26th.
Gotcha. All right, moving on. Let's see. Okay, let me put this back. All right, now to the lights, because I wanted to kind of save it, because now we've got almost 1,700 people in here. Thank you guys so much. I know there's a lot of questions in here, but it's not every day you get to have a former FBI agent such as Jennifer on, and it's such an honor. So again, I wish I could get to chat, but we're going to try to get these questions, because again, how often do I get to have such a wonderful person on with the background that she has. So let's get to the lights.
Last sighting of Sebastian.
Oh, actually, there's one more thing before the lights. I apologize. One more thing, and this is
Rogers and Proof of Life.
Feedback.
This audio comes from Sweetie Pilo, who interviewed the neighbor who lives across the street from the Proudfoots.
That really matters. So there's a lot of speculation. When was he last seen? 6:30 on Sunday night. Law enforcement has him on camera leaving the steakhouse. They drive for 9 minutes back to the house. Now, about a week after this information was uncovered, I guess, from law enforcement, or it's actually, no, about a week into the investigation, then Katie comes out and says, hey, by the way, I have dash cam footage. So Sebastian is actually heard in the vehicle on dash cam during that drive home. So we know for sure, 100%. And so far, my source has been on point.
Okay, so this is something I don't know if you've addressed, and I'm just, before you talk, I've listened to, just for some context, this content creator had literally spoken to the neighbor that lives across the street from the Proudfoots, right? Who has seen the ring cam footage that literally looks at the Proudfoot home. And this neighbor has obviously been in the home and spoken with the Proudfeet. So the question is one, have you heard about the dash cam, and is it true?
Yes, I have heard about the dash cam, and yes, I believe it to be true. I believe that was the only video that exists. I don't think that with the Proudfoots controlled. In other words, they didn't have video inside or outside, but I do believe the dash cam video, and I do believe he actually arrived at the house.
At the house. Okay. Let's see. I think I had a secondary question in that, which was, so according to this neighbor, I cut you out there. According to this neighbor, she said that spoke to Katie. Again, we'll just kind of say speculating, because we can't, this is kind of, a neighbor speaking with, so it's kind of secondhand, but or third party, I guess, what you call it. But anyway, she says that Katie came back to this neighbor and said that she had to show this footage as proof of life. And if that's true, what does that say about the investigation, if that is true?
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me because whenever you're running an investigation like this, you have to determine the last known proof of life. When is there something that is completely objective that tells you this person was alive? So we knew from Texas Roadhouse he was alive, but then they're trying to find out, did anything happen between Texas Roadhouse and her house? And that made a lot of sense because they were just working with what she had to say. And
Sure.
so I believe the dash cam video verified what she said. And then I think, as I said later, I believe he must have been caught on video for them to adjust the time and date to the 26th.
Interesting. And again, just one last thing to comment on that. If that's true, I just find it interesting. If, like I said, if this statement is true, a week later, why would she need to show proof of life? Does that kind of show where maybe the investigation kind of where they're maybe kind of looking into, again, if this is true, it's just kind of more speculation because we're kind of going off kind of third hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one, I think the video that they are observing, law enforcement, based on the dark conditions, even with a waning gibbous, I think with those dark conditions, everything is grainy. And so I think that for instance, the trash being put out and other things, I think they are making their best estimation. And I also believe that the FBI and Secret Service have completely revamp those videos so that they can be seen more clearly, like to tell us glasses on and height and things like that. The other thing I'm very curious about as to whether this has given them information is the keypad. The keypads that they talk about that were on their home, particularly the door pad, will indicate a time, Chris.
Oh, wait, say that last part.
Could those indicate a time?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with that. I live in an apartment. I've always been kind of in the apartment. So with those, I don't know. Is all of them? Do they keep a time record on those, or is it just kind of depend on obviously the brand or?
I think brand, the make and model is what's important, and how sophisticated. Certainly, there are many systems that do that. And considering she worked for Brinks, I just think, could that have been the reason why they believe he left at that time? Is that what they think? I just think it's an interesting thing for consideration.
Interesting. Okay, now on to the lights. I've got some very exciting stuff to show. I know Jennifer has seen some of it. So let's get into it. Let's see here. And I'll kind of share a little bit of what I've heard because I have a few sources that I speak to. And I'll try to provide context that I know. Again, doesn't mean that's it's the truth. It's just what I've heard. A lot of what I've heard has been corroborated, in some form or another. But again, there's always context that we still don't have. So here we go. The mysterious lights. I kind of have, so at the beginning, because I wasn't sure how the StreamYard was going to go, I have kind of my pre-recorded voice kind of going over this. But here's just kind of explaining the lights from my understanding. And then we have something special for those that may have not seen it yet that somebody did. That's really awesome.
Mysterious lights video and more. What do we know about the lights video and what has been released or leaked to the public? Here's a Nick Barris news clip.
Looking for clues.
We have had several clips that have come in.
And this one is getting the most attention, showing signs of activity around Sebastian's home the night he disappeared. You see, two light sources, which we've circled to help you follow. For point of reference, the security camera was pointed toward the back of Sebastian's home in a common area. In the video, you see subject 1 with a light source in the lower right-hand corner. Then you see subject 2 briefly appear and move toward the first before that light source is covered or obscured by bushes. Subject 1, a few seconds later, then moves out of frame. Then subject 2 reappears and follows subject 1 off screen. It's a short time later, and it's very vague, but then you see one of the subjects moving quickly back through the common area, and that is it. File. And I'm told it could become more significant depending on where the ongoing investigation leads.
Okay, so we'll circle back to what he said because I think it's very important, and it's something that it took me a minute to catch, but like I said, we'll get to it at the end. But for anybody that doesn't fully understand the video, here's just kind of a simple explanation from my studies anyway.
The Nick Barris video, which would be a cropped and zoomed in portion of the surveillance video, leaving the public without much context. But I take a still shot from the zoomed out video so you can see where the Nick's portion is coming from. What many did not know is how Subject 1 and Subject 2 originally got labeled as they appeared. I recently figured out how I believe they came to the conclusion.
So have you ever heard or understood how they labeled Subject 2 and Subject 1?
I always just thought it was because Subject 1 was at the furthest side of that screen, but I don't know.
Yeah, so I'll explain it here. It's something that I finally kind of discovered after looking at this for so many hours. But here's the explanation, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. And then, of course, I've got plenty of questions for you here in just a minute. This will probably be the longest section without asking a question because there's just to provide all the context for you.
In one of the leaked videos, we can actually see Subject 1 appear by itself and move across the screen. The Nick Barris video shows what happens right after. This video shows how they labeled Subject 1 and 2 as only one light appears first, then Subject 2 follows.
So in a leaked video that would come out a little bit later, because we had the Nick Barris, and then we had a Facebook group, which I'll explain here in just a minute, where they released 3 more videos. And one of those videos actually just shows one light moving. And I think when you go and putting all these in order after studying this for so long, is one of these videos is actually before the Nick Barris video, which is just one light moving. Then, and what's interesting is where it kind of ends. Then when you add in Nick Barris's video, you'll notice then Subject 2 comes in. So that's where you have Subject 1, where it's just one light moving across the screen, if that makes sense. And then it kind of comes towards the end here by itself. And then when you add in the Nick Barris, Subject 1 is now in place from the first video. And then we have the continuation there.
Not long after the Nick Barris video was released, in one of the Facebook groups for Sebastian, someone would post 3 more clips of the surveillance footage from that night. These videos would reveal a lot more than just lights moving in the background. One of the biggest issues from these videos is that the timestamp is frozen at 3:11 a.m. This has caused much confusion on when this video was actually recorded. On top of that, when looking at the newer clips, it appears that a car is seen turning on its lights. Meanwhile, flashlights are moving around before and after this mysterious vehicle appears.
And what's interesting,
his keychain.
Oh gosh, this is what I hate about StreamYard is it goes. There we go. Okay, accidentally
On top of
reset
that,
the video.
when looking at the newer,
So you'll notice this light right here, and I know it's really tiny, but I'll blow it up here in a minute. When that car turns on, that is one of the subjects. We just don't know if it's Subject 1 or Subject 2 because, we have just little snippets, right? We can kind of put them in order, but obviously we don't have the full context of everything.
clips, it appears that a car is seen turning on its lights. Meanwhile, flashlights are moving around before and after this mysterious vehicle appears.
So right there, I just wanted to show, you can see as this mysterious vehicle that we believe is to be a vehicle, that light there is one of the subjects. So just to kind of add that. And again, I got just a little bit more, and then we'll get some questions from you. I apologize. This is the longest one here.
No, this is great.
Thank you, Jennifer.
There's still much debate on where and what the lights are, where they're coming from, and exactly what time did this all take place. It's alleged that the owner or friend of the homeowner played the video forward to where they saw the garbage truck, which usually comes around the same time, at approximately 5 a.m. From there, they just rewound the footage back until they saw the mysterious lights.
So this is something I've spoken with my source, and I won't go too much into it, but so how they, because obviously the timestamp is stuck at 3:11, right? And it was stuck since Friday, and then mysteriously or coincidentally, a day after the Sebastian Rogers go missing on Tuesday, the timestamp goes back. And I have done studies. I've tried to look and see if there's any kind of way to tamper with the timestamp. I couldn't find anything. And plus, this actual camera is hardwired, where if you have something that's Wi-Fi, such as a Ring camera, it's more vulnerable to, be, you can use jammers and stuff like that. So it'd be very hard to actually tamper with this specific camera. But to give a little context from what I heard, to figure out kind of an estimated time of when these lights were going on, is they fast forwarded it to where they saw the garbage truck, because they knew the garbage truck would be coming, at around 5 a.m. That's the usual time it comes. So what they did is from there, they rewound the video to, a few hours back. And here is this mysterious lights video that they believe is around 3 a.m. That's what I've heard. That's allegedly. Of course, we can't, but maybe after the show, I could tell you a little bit more about where that's come from. But that's what I've heard, if that kind of makes sense. Because
it does. I mean, no matter what, when a video gets stuck, and I can't tell you how many times we seized videos and they were stuck, or the time was wrong, or they didn't adjust for daylight savings time, or it's really shocking how often that would happen. And then we have to start backtracking, just like they did, or tracking. In other words, something that you would see them on camera and they'd say, "Oh, I went to a birthday party at that time," and then you go forward.
Deduce what? Yeah.
To deduce what the actual time of the event was. Steve Fisher, when he was interviewed by Lore Lodge, he also said that he spoke with the neighbor, or he said he spoke with the neighbor that provided this footage. And his story was that the neighbor backtracks it back to around 5, that the trash, I think, was, sometime after that. But nevertheless, that's what's going to be used to determine the time. My only point with all of this, I find it interesting that law enforcement says midnight for the last time Sebastian is seen. Barefoot, freezing weather, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing. That's what we're reading. Around midnight. That was seen. That's the footage I've pulled and what's been said in the news. And I'm thinking, even if it's 3, what in the world could Sebastian or anybody have been doing for 3 hours with no shoes and freezing cold weather? Because it was cold.
Yeah.
And so for me, the only way I can sort of bring my way through this is that I don't think we have a good timestamp time. I just don't think we do.
Okay. We'll circle back to that, because there's something you said in your previous live that we'll kind of circle back to that. But yeah, very interesting. I love this. And again, thank you so much for your time. It means the world to me. So here we go. Continuing on, and thank you so much for the love and chat. I'm sorry, usually we kind of stop and stuff, but again, we have Jennifer on here, and want to try to get as many questions as we can with her. So let's move
from
on.
There, they could get an approximate time of around 3 a.m. allegedly. The biggest was trying to figure out what is the source of the two stationary lights that appear close to where the two moving lights move away from. I spent over 100 hours staring at this video and images, and came to the conclusion that the bright two lights were likely floodlights. One major thing to note is how the surveillance camera itself is positioned, because it's sitting on an angled driveway, creating the illusion that everything is tilted. Because there has been such a debate on where these lights are coming from, I had somebody in our community named Pincho. They built a 3D render of part of the neighborhood.
This right here is absolutely amazing. For anybody that has not seen this yet, I promise you, you're in for an amazing reveal. This is somebody, part of the community. His name's Pincho. He basically did a 3D rendering. It's been a long time since I've done 3D rendering, so I understand the concepts and everything, but basically he's just taking the floor plan. He's taking Google Earth and using that as a floor plan, and then just building models from that. And then, of course, since it's a 3D rendering, he can move into that world, move anywhere and point a camera, whatever, any view he wants. He can turn on lights. He can add source, he can add the sun, whatever. The possibilities are endless. But the biggest thing is he has the floor plan from Google Earth, and then using the images that we have in video, you can kind of add those together. And what we're going to reveal, if you haven't seen it, in my opinion, it is just absolutely amazing. It kind of validifies what I've been kind of harping on, where these lights have been going on. And so we'll show this, and then we've got some questions for Jennifer here.
Where the surveillance camera and mysterious lights were coming from. Using Google Earth as a floor plan, they built 3D models, and what I'm about to show you will hopefully end the debate.
So what if we could just turn the lights on this mysterious video when it's paused right here? And Pincho was able to do that, building a 3D model, and we are going to be doing more. Well, I don't want to say we, but him. I'm going to try to help him, but we are going to be trying to add more, such as the lights and the possible vehicle as well. So here is the surveillance footage paused, and he is now going to show the 3D rendering of the models. Again, you can see how this is Google Earth. Notice how this, if you were to look at Google Earth, you kind of get this ground, but you can see where he's built the 3D models almost one-to-one. Again, it's building a floor plan off the Google Earth. So, everything is there. He's just building the 3D models, and he can put a camera anywhere he wants, and the lighting and everything, and just a few more things. And I've got some questions for Jennifer here. So now we can see where the lights are coming from, which is, in my opinion, where we've been pointing at. I know SF is trying to say that there's some guy walking a garbage. His new, first they were saying the lights were up here, but there was no way, because the camera, cuts off half the boat. So there's no way you could get lights over here. The latest thing that I've seen him talk about is a guy walking his trash can down the ramp with a flashlight, but yet he doesn't mention the other flashlight that's moving. So to me, I don't buy that story personally. That's just my opinion, of course, because we can't see what's going on up there. All of this is cut off. But we have the gazebo, we have where the floodlights are at, and we have the home. Now, this is something I created like 5 months ago. Don't think of this as more of just kind of an approximate area of where these lights are moving. But we have Sebastian's home in the background. The floodlights are approximately somewhere on this house, in my opinion. We can see subject 1, which appears to be kind of hovering off to the right. in my opinion, is kind of waiting for subject 2 to kind of now move across the common area, as it's called. And from there, whatever goes on, that's still a mystery to me. But we're going to be working on the next thing is we're going to try to figure out what kind of light source that could be, because obviously you got flashlights, cell phones, but it seems to me, whatever light source that is, depending on how far away that is, it's got to be pretty bright. You would think at the very least some kind of flashlight, maybe a cell phone flashlight, but again, that's something I would love to recreate and do a test on. So with all that, what are your thoughts about the timing of the mysterious lights going on around a time where a child goes missing between 12 and 6? Again, we don't know 100% when this footage is taken, although I think there's something that SF just kind of confirmed that time, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. But so to get your thoughts on that, sorry for that, how long that took. Most of the stuff will be much quicker, but I just want to give full context. So floor is yours there, Jennifer.
Well, two things. The lights that you showed that were those brighter lights, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that those are emanating from the house of Sebastian Rogers. The ones that aren't moving. Mm-hmm. Whether you said that, right?
Yeah, the floodlights.
Yes.
Yeah, they're just stationary. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure that people understood that, because I think a lot of people were even getting confused. Oh, are those the trash truck lights? But that's what this reveal said, because I know you've looked at it so much, but I just wanted to dial that in for everybody, that is coming from the lights on Sebastian's house. They're stationary. They're not far in the distance like was once thought. And I believe those are Sebastian's house. As far as the lights 1 and 2, we'll call them, right? 1 is because people believe that they entered the scene before 2, right? Yep. So we see 1 and then we see 2.
Yep.
I think they're significant. I don't know what the timing is, but they are significant. And I think that they possibly could hold the key in this. I think if charges are ever brought, I think this will be important footage that will be used. And again, I do believe that Secret Service and the FBI have enhanced this light figures to be very as good as it can get. As far as the light source, Chris, that you ask about, and a lot of people have said, well, could a keychain flashlight produce this light? And I agree with you, Chris. It really needs to be redone, which will be difficult because you would still need to use the actual video machine camera that was used, right, to make this. You couldn't use your own, or you can't recreate.
Yeah, you're right. You'd want to use the same camera, so you're getting the same, and you would have to have the same environment, the same everything that went on that night to get the full picture, to fully recreate it in a 1-to-1. Yeah, I 100% agree. I just want to correct you on one thing. We believe the floodlights are actually not on Sebastian's house, but the neighbor's home. So this one, so you have Sebastian. So you have Sebastian's home. Oh, let me blow this up. Oh, can you see my mouse?
You know what? I'm going to put on my glasses. Go ahead.
So you have Sebastian's. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you for correcting me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we believe the floodlights are actually coming from the neighbor's home, just that's kind of on the corner. If we're looking at it, we have Sebastian's home kind of sitting behind the floodlights. Then we have a home on the corner left here. We believe that's where the floodlights are at. And then it appears that subject 2 almost comes out where around the backyard of Sebastian's home, if that makes sense. But the main thing is we believe the floodlights, and actually let me back this up. In the Pincho, he shows, so this home here, see the gazebo, and if you just kind of look top left, that home kind of to the left of it, that's where we believe the floodlights are at. And then if you see the home that's kind of sticking out to the right next to the gazebo, to the right, not on the far right, but just kind of it's almost looking like they're one home, if that makes sense.
Yes.
That's Sebastian's home. That
Right.
kind of half
This
part.
far one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
see my cursor. This is where the floodlights are.
Unfortunately, I can't see your mouse, but yeah, it would just, if you looked at the gazebo in the red,
To
it
the
would
far
literally just be to the left of that,
Right.
and that's the neighbor's home.
Right. And apologies. Yeah.
No,
I
that's okay.
misspoke.
That's
This
okay. No worries.
So we're kind of saying the same thing, but you're right. I called it Sebastian's house. Here's Sebastian's house, and then here's the light. So what my point was going to be, and I appreciate you saying that because I did misspeak, is
No,
that
it's okay.
the flashlights, once you all do that 3D rendering, I think it's going to be so critical, right? Because we're going to be able to see exactly where those are. You're going to flip the lights on for us again so we can see where those are in that common area. I think it'll be important.
Yeah. And this will kind of lead to our next thing, which not a lot of people have talked about, and I'm so excited because I get to have you, kind of talk about this because, again, this is something that I saw in a news clip, and I'm like, wow, I think I know what that is. And then we kind of researched it, and then it's like, yeah, this is, and we'll show it here in just a second. Let me get the video here. So fast forward that. So again, I think you kind of answered this. So I asked, with the lighting, the February 26th, you kind of answered that. So we'll kind of skip that. Then we have the 258 car. I am going to circle back to that because with what you kind of said earlier in your live, that's something that I would like to end on because I think this could confirm something. So we'll skip that for now. So we'll come back to that. Okay. Yeah, and I'll just remember to come back to that. Okay. So how long did this all take place? Because, we had this mysterious car. We have these lights going on. And how long did this all take place? And Nick Barris actually kind of answers this, which is very interesting.
Of the news clip.
Appear and move toward the first before that light source is covered or obscured by bushes. Subject 1, a few seconds later, then moves out of frame. Then Subject 2 reappears and follows Subject 1 off screen. It's a short time later and it's very vague, but then you see one of the subjects moving quickly back through the common area, and that is it.
So if you heard what he just said there, and he showed the first part of the video, and then he showed, because, we've kind of had a bunch of clips, and he then showed that last video where then it's just one light moving. And here is that video, and I'm going to play it for you. And what I find interesting is there's something now missing. Well, there's two things missing. There's only one light moving now, and there's something else that's missing. It's not the best quality, unfortunately, because we've got second, third, fourth generation video. But let me show you this and then get your thoughts on it. So this is that last part that he shows, what we call video 4. And now the car is gone unless it's just got its lights off. But in my opinion, it's I don't know. Either the car's still there and it's got its lights off, which would just be, in my opinion, even more suspicious, or it's gone. But we can see the light. I know it's really hard to see, but that is it. And so if we bring the totality of what Nick Barris said, where he kind of shows the first part of the lights, which, there's a car, although he doesn't talk about the car. And then at the end, he shows the clip where we see the light moving. And in his opinion, it happened in a short time of period. What's your thoughts on that? If that's true, if that's something that happened pretty quickly, depending on how you interpret it,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you have a child that went missing and you have all this activity with these lights, and I think they're going to be significant. Secondarily to that, when you're talking about the time frame, to me, it shows something that obviously was rapidly done. So in other words, it's not a game of tag with friends. It's not something that was elongated. It was a quick entrance on screen, exit on screen, reappearance. So all of that is very significant when law enforcement is putting all these pieces together as to what could have happened to him.
Yeah. And the biggest point is, you know, at the same time, this is going on. You have a child that went missing between 12 and 6. And that's why, to me, I've always focused on this because, you know, again, I'm no expert, but, you know, I've covered some true crime. And to me, it just, you know, when it comes to coincidences, and I've, you know, spoken with former detectives and forensic, and in their opinion, you know, there's no coincidences in true crime. That's his motto anyway. So anyway, now moving on to something that I was talking about that I think has not been talked about, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this. Let me blow this up real quick. So in a news clip, it shows what appears to be a 3D scanner. Give a little context here. So we see a short clip. I could not, it's really tough, and I zoom in for you. But I have, you know, looked at it. There's another clip where it shows him walking with it. Of course, I had it, and I wanted to add it in just to kind of show you because it also gives you a little more context. But clearly, it's on a tripod. It's set up to where it can do a 360. To me, there's no question this is a 3D scanner, unless you could verify it's not. But I would bet the farm this is like some kind of 3D scanner. And this looks like, I believe, Sheriff Craddock. But where they're at is they're in Sebastian's backyard. And so I'll just kind of give you a reference here, and I'll have the question here in just a second. And I wouldn't be, you know, well, I'll talk about it here in a second. But so we have Sebastian's home on the right here, and the backyard, this white house, is the house just directly behind it. They both have a kind of like a square fenced off area. And then in between, there's actually just kind of a little gap, you know, where you can walk through between the backyards, if that makes sense. And so they're kind of in between that, but they are set up right there. You can kind of see, you know, the reference point with the two windows where they're at. Now, the reason why I bring this up is the fact that where they're at is in the backyard, kind of near that common area. And again, the fact that I believe is and I'm not sure if it's the Faro brand, but it may be something similar. If this is a Faro 3D scanner, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular device because I haven't used it, just to be honest. I haven't used that, but I can tell you that the purpose of any type of scanning device, the type of scanning devices that exist would to be either provide very specific relational information to recreate and construct for later use and models. And the other reason would be for a scanning device, and I don't know if this could be that, but also there are scanning devices, obviously, that can see through things. That doesn't look like that one to me, but it looks more like to be used for recreation. That's what I see.
Yes.
Complete recreation, because whenever you leave and then now you're trying to figure out your hypotheses of what happened and movements and things, you're going to need to recreate it where you can work with it. And so I believe that that would be the purpose for any sort of 3D type scanner. I just don't know that particular Faro scanner.
Gotcha. So the other question I would have is, if this is a Faro scanner and we looked at it, and I'm like 80% sure. I think we even found like the model, and I of course, it actually might be in chat. I know I have somebody, because one of my connections, she does ground penetrating radar,
Yes,
and yes.
could be.
But so she's very familiar with a lot of these different gadgets, and yeah. So when I was playing this for the first time, I think she found the exact model, because it's slightly different from the Faro, but it does the same thing. You know, it's on the tripod. It has a 360, and like you said, it creates kind of basically the crime, or the scene in a 3D manner, where they can go back. You know, it is now visualized in a 3D way, almost like our 3D model that we're building. And same concept. And so the other question would be is, if this is the case of them using that, is that common for them to be using that in a missing persons case?
Well, it's common for them to be using it in any case where they believe there's criminal activity. You know, one of the cases that we saw that used is in the Brian Koberger case, as an example, to recreate. And so,
yeah.
Yeah, that was, a big example of that. But they're really critical to being able to evaluate and not being there. And so it makes all the sense in the world to me, because at the point that that Amber Alert was issued, in my view, was the point that they knew that this was moving in the direction of a criminal investigation, from the standpoint of he couldn't just disappear, because they had done their proper search of an area grid that would likely be able to be where Sebastian would likely be able to go, if that makes sense. And then once you start moving outside of that, then that's when you think you have to have a car, you have to have some way to transport somebody outside a grid somebody could reasonably walk to. And recall too, that barefoot piece of this whole puzzle, I believe, would very much limit the amount of ground that Sebastian Rogers would ever walk on his own.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Yeah, because I'm surprised not a lot of, and I'm sure maybe there's some channels that may have caught that, but I at least I haven't seen it, and it just kind of blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because that clip is very short, and of course with Sebastian, and now it's been almost 11 months. And, I was looking through certain footage, and then I just happened to see it for a short clip, because it's a very short clip. There's 2 clips now that I've seen. They're, excuse me, they're very short, so you can easily miss them. But, eventually I caught it, and I'm like, man, what is that? And then the fact that they're in the backyard, and it just kind of adds in, and we'll kind of get more into it here in just a minute with the totality of everything. You had one of your lives not too long ago where I'm trying to get this off the screen for a minute. Sorry, guys. Where you talked about, you just have your red flags that you're kind of, and we'll talk about that. So continuing on. All right.
What was the date of that again? That clip you just pulled, do you recall?
So that is a great question. I have searched and searched.
Oh.
So the first time I saw it come up was on Court TV, but it was like a month ago. A month later, I did find a clip that was about 2 weeks out, but chat says that they've seen it within like the first 3 to 7 days. Again, I would love to verify that, because I know, because like, when was that being used? Right. It would be nice to know. I think it would have been within the first week to 2 weeks, I think.
Mm-hmm. My pivot point to me to really understand is, was it when they basically stopped their ground searching and went into what we call, investigative intelligence-based searching. In other words, now you're working with leads and intelligence to decide where you're going to go look, not just canvassing and conducting grid searches.
Yeah, and I also wondered, were they using that because obviously you're building a 3D model, kind of like what we're doing with the lights, and are they trying to kind of figure out where but they're on the other side where the lights are actually at, and maybe they're kind of doing it from the other side, maybe along with there could be other obviously variables that maybe there's clues that they had seen that they want to memorialize and be able to go back to. And then obviously another thing that they can use is this is for court. They can go back and show, hey, this is what we found. And, that's something when I looked up the Pharaoh video, it's something they kind of talk about in it.
Well, it's really important because whenever you're doing a case, what you're always thinking about is court. You're always thinking about that. You're never thinking about really what's going on in this space and time without thinking about court. Because if you do, you're going to screw up because you have to have everything collected, processed, videotaped, memorialized so that it can hold up in court.
Sure.
So, that's really where your thought processes are going on everything. In other words, why you wouldn't even look at something without getting a warrant, say, or without, having the proper legal authority because it can come back to bite you. So even though you're searching for a child, the most important thing is, the ability to find them and save them in case they're in peril. But at the same time, you should be thinking about preservation of a potential crime scene.
Absolutely. And what better way to show a juror if this does come to a criminal investigation, if you have some, obviously a memorialized crime scene, or a part of, a crime scene. So very great insight. Thank you. So continuing on here. So one of the things I've been involved in a few searches. I've worked with EquiSearch in the Dylan Rounds case. Now EquiSearch is amazing.
They're amazing. They're amazing.
Yeah. And then I've also done some independent work with Aiden Clune, which is a boy that went missing around the same time as Dylan Rounds. Unfortunately, his story didn't get a lot of traction because Dylan Rounds, it's just kind of how it goes in the media. It's just, unfortunate. But so I understand, a little bit. And this is the thing that I want to show is, so let me blow this up real quick. And let me just show you. So, because I've seen maps like this, because in the Aiden Clune case, they use programs called Catalpo. I think it's called Talpo. For those people that are on the ground searching, that way it tracks their movement. It's GPS. So all this, I know it looks like just a spaghetti bowl of lines and stuff, but I kind of understand what this is. You've got, things that are air searches. You've got a lot of ground patrol, drone things. And just to give you an idea of the massive search this was compared to other searches, let me just show you the neighborhood as we zoom this in. So this is the neighborhood, and that alone is huge. And let me just kind of give you how big this search is. And this is not even the entire map. So that's me zooming in, and that might not even be 100% accurate, but that's just kind of an approximate estimation of how massive this search was. And I've have a source that did kind of help in this case early on. They believe they've used the word up to 1,500, but I'll just say over 1,000 just to be careful. But in a case where you've had over 1,000 searchers with ground, land, spelunking, you name it, drones, everything, and in this case, not a single piece of clothing, item, or Sebastian himself has been found. In your case, what are your thoughts on, compared to other searches where some are like 300 to 500 people, this is almost, 3-4 times that, yet nothing of his was found?
Well, I'm going to bring you back to a search that everybody will know about, and that is the search for Brian Laundrie. I believe
Oh, yeah.
5 weeks, millions and millions and millions of dollars, thousands and thousands,
Oh, yeah, them going through that preserve.
hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officers, every piece of high-tech equipment that is invented. The FBI was there, Secret Service, all the federal agencies. So they brought all their money, all their gadgetry. They had everything, and they never found one thing until, they released the scene. And then the parents, within 1 hour,
They go right to it.
yep, they found not only him, right, but they found the notebook and the backpack and all of that. So that's just one example that I know many, many people are very familiar with. And for me personally, I'll go back to the case that I always cite because it was the last one I worked, and it had an autistic child. And we were on, I believe, day 3, and I was in charge of the command post. And I was asking about how thoroughly all the waterways were searched. And people were like, yeah, well, they were pretty searched. And so I asked for all of the law enforcement area dive teams, anybody who had a dive team at all, for them to be contacted and to go and search each one again. I believe that was on Saturday or Sunday. And when they came back out and researched, they found the child very close by in a neighbor's pond that hadn't been adequately searched. So I always say, when it comes to a child who is autistic, it is critical to search the waterways that are closest, that they could rationally walk to completely thoroughly. And if you've done it, redo it, because this happens. So, and in that case, I will say, and I brought this up before, that the mother of this child failed the polygraph. And that was very important to us. We were really dialing down on what had happened. And it turned out that she was remiss. She knew she had a wanderer, somebody that constantly liked to get out. So all the doors were barred and blocked, and windows. And she had forgotten to close and lock up the door. And it was her guilt over that caused her to fail. You only ask a couple of questions, and it was like, do you know what happened? Or I can't remember the exact question, but I think she knew, because she was remiss in locking that door, that she felt responsible. And so I always caution people, because sometimes people lie, but they lie for different reasons and about different things. So I think it's just really important to remember.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see here. So we got that. Let me put that over here. Oops, let me turn that back up. So this is where, to me, there's some red flags going on here. So items Sebastian Rogers did and did not have. So from what we know, he has some kind of black t-shirt or sweatshirt that might be a Minecraft or something. I forget the other logo they mentioned, and sweatpants, right? And yet he has no coat, no cell phone. I would think, if he was going to, if this is a runaway, he would try to contact his father, and, but there's none of that. And no shoes, which I find very interesting. I've kind of gone over, in my opinion, which way I think if he went out, whether if it was willing or not, then the only way he could go out would be the back door, because because if he went out the front door, according to, I think, Seth and others, all of his shoes are right by the front door. So I would think if you went out the front door, your shoes are right there. Why not grab your shoes? But he allegedly didn't. But yet, the one thing he did allegedly take is this keychain flashlight. And it's, I believe Seth has said that doesn't work anymore. I don't know 100%, but I find it interesting. Obviously, many red flags, but one of the things is, how did they know so fast? With such a tiny item, and maybe I'm overthinking this. This is just a question because I know you're a mother. But with how tiny this is and how, thinking how big this is, having a missing child, that how would you know that that's missing? Unless that's like kept on like a certain area where he always keeps it, and again, maybe I'm overthinking this, but what's your thoughts on this? Like this keychain, and I even have a post here where it was reported by at least, I think, day 2. I don't know, it may be day 1, but I'm sure at least by day 2, that flashlight was known. So, and this is a picture of, obviously it's his bedroom, but it's not, obviously it's from Zillow, so obviously it's just, what I call a stock photo, but even though it's his, that is his bedroom, that is his floor plan. He's got one window which faces the front, which also, when it comes to the flashlight tag, doesn't make sense to me, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's just something I'm kind of over looking too much in, or?
So a couple of things. First of all, I do think the flashlight worked. I received information of that.
Okay.
Second thing, I do believe it was a fidget toy of his.
Yes.
Something that was like a comfort fidget toy. And so to me, that would make sense that they might check for that, something that comforted him or that he liked to fidget with.
That's true.
The one thing I would add to your list would be the switch, because my understanding is he was much more, and I don't know if you know about those switches. They're like half red and half blue.
Oh, yeah.
My son has one. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, those little switches. So.
Oh, yeah. Minecraft. Yep.
Yeah, they, a lot of kids are absolutely glued to their switches. And my understanding is he was glued to his switch. And so when you think about this, that I think is big, that he didn't take the switch, but he took the comfort, fiddle flashlight.
Yeah.
You used it or not, we don't know, but at least that he took that. I do think he went out the front door. And I think that based on what I do believe might be camera film that law enforcement may have. And then also that lock that I think may be providing clues. That's what I believe based on a compilation of what law enforcement has said, what Seth has said, what Steve Fisher recently said, and he's the representative, right, for the Proudfoots.
Yeah.
So when you add all of that together, I think that that's sort of the picture. As far as not taking his shoes, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I've always said, and I know this sounds terrible, but if somebody was responsible for this inside the house, this was an inside job.
Yeah.
They might think of taking, the keychain and putting his glasses on. But in the frenzy of, carrying somebody, taking somebody away, in the frenzy of something like that, you might not put their shoes on, because you just that's just from from my experience. You don't put shoes on somebody that, unfortunately, if they don't have them on already, that you're trying to dispose of them. But
and that makes sense. And yeah, it's terrible to think about. And I hope that's not the case and he's alive somewhere. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah. Why?
Probabilities and possibilities.
Right.
And that is a possibility.
Wow. That is very interesting.
Because then typically you put the socks on, you put the shoe on. So, but again, working with what we have. What we do have is this video footage, supposedly, of an unidentified person that's very difficult to make out, that's in the street. It's not that doesn't have a light source. We have our light sources.
Yeah, but something else from a different video maybe, or...
But it could be anybody. It could be
Sure.
Sebastian, it could be somebody uninvolved, but they've been unidentified is my understanding anyway, if we're to believe what Stephen Fisher said. And he has a lot of video, 100 hours, he says, of video.
Yeah. Oh man, boy, would I know I'm not a PI or anything. I'm just a YouTuber. But man, what I would do to just to help, like I said, I've always said from the beginning, I could care less who's actually behind it. I just want to help find the answers, whoever's responsible. Again, like I've said, that's just on them.
Well, Chris, the reason that, to me, if Stephen Fisher has something like this is why you are important. And people like Pinshu are important. It's the attention to detail, is the time. This is what you do. And so you have the time to slowly and meticulously, you can see it in your work, look through this. And so from that standpoint, I think it could be quite helpful. Does law enforcement ever miss anything? I mean, we learned, again, if we're to believe Stephen Fisher, that law enforcement didn't even get this film that filmed the front of the door.
Right.
And
I would think that'd be pretty big. I mean, that is facing the home. I mean, that would be the first one I'd go for. And I've seen the screenshot of, one of, part of it.
Yeah, if we're to, we have to consider the source, right? This is out of Stephen Fisher's mouth, who says that the neighbor told him this. So, you got to take it all into consideration.
Sure.
But I hope, Chris, that law enforcement got everybody's video. They should have gone door to door, and not just in the immediate area, that entire area, that entire neighborhood, and the choke points, and the cameras from the down
the street, down the interstate. Yeah. Gas stations.
This is
school.
Just 101. And then there's never enough people to review it ever, unless you get the FBI.
Yeah.
And we have hundreds of analysts. You saw what happened in Coburger as an example again. They utilized all our analysts to try to find the car, the Elantra. So, in other words, to me, that's where people become important. Extra eyes to see things.
Oh yeah, anybody could miss anything. And what's funny is, well, it's not funny, but it's just, I've studied the same footage for months, and even just recently I've discovered new things, and it's been there all along, but sometimes you're focused on one part of the video, and then as time goes on, then you got to take a break, and then you come back, fresh eyes and fresh perspective. And yeah, there's been things just like with the order of the subject 1 and 2. I only learned that maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. It feels like it was just yesterday how much I've looked at it. But yeah, because I always wondered, like, how did they get subject 1 and subject 2, because 1 is on the right, and if we usually go left to right. So to me, I'm like, okay, there's got to be a reason. And then when I looked at the footage that was leaked, one of them actually is, if you put them all in chronological order, one of them goes before Nick Barris's video, which shows just one light moving, and then where it stops, and then if you add in Nick Barris, it's like a continuation. So it's like you've got pieces of film and they're all cut up, and maybe you're missing some pieces, but you got to kind of now put them in order, and you still don't, of course, have all the context. But all right, we'll move on, and let me know. We hit the hour 15-minute mark. I think I have like 30 minutes. I don't know. Let me know at any time when, because I know you already did a live. So if you could just, 30 minutes, okay? Or.
Yeah, let's get her done.
Okay. You call it. Again, I'm
glad to be here. I mean, I think it's so important that everybody keep his face and name out here. And the more we learn about movements, timing, maybe the more people can help. Remember, a lot of people might see this that don't even know anything about this, and this could be really important.
Sure. Oh yeah. Be like, oh my gosh, I remember so and so. Yeah.
Exactly. The Bethunes. I always point that out with Gavin.
Yeah. Oh, God, that. I mean, what are the odds?
Anything was going on, and then they hear about it. So the more
that is wild.
Face, name, cars, flashlight videos, the more people might say, wait a minute.
Yeah. 100% agree. Okay. Let's continue on. No, I'm not going to get too much into the dogs. This is really just kind of showing how Chris had mentioned this diagonal thing. And this is kind of just the totality of everything. Am I at that point? FBI? Yeah, this is the totality real quick.
That's where they get over to the main road, go up Kellens, and head over to the other side.
So just for reference, the house that is in a green circle, that's the neighbor's home, right? And that's the one with the floodlights. The home that's at the top, that's the Proudfoots. The yellow line is kind of where in his, I know you've kind of talked about it in your previous life that they don't think they got a scent. I just pointing out really just the fact that he mentions this diagonal, and that's only really what I'm focused on, and we'll come full circle on that. But and then the lights where you see the yellow line kind of go, that is kind of the approximate area of where the lights are going, and so just kind of showing the totality of everything here.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. You do so much work with all of this. I mean, only when you're on this side of things and you mess with things do you realize how much work all of this takes.
3 days, but of course,
but
I love what I do, so it's
love what you do. You can tell.
So as you can see, I'm putting up my red flags because one, we got this 3D scanner going on in the backyard, right? And and I think it's pretty, in my opinion, I've never heard of a 3D scanner being used in a missing person case. Not to say I'm sure it hasn't. We know it's used in recreation videos for vehicle accidents. But really, where you see this circle here is where there's just all these red flags to me. It's just kind of just all these little clues building up, and so I'm just kind of showing everything here. And we'll see here. I kind of put everything together, but he talks about the dogs going diagonally, whether they got a scent or not. Obviously, you said they didn't, and I believe what you say. I do find it's interesting. He says diagonal, which it does appear that these lights are going diagonal. So if you just kind of add everything in, as you said, you're building your little kind of thing of red flags that, just, keep a mental note of. These, in my opinion, are my red flags. We've got, mysterious lights, the 3 a.m. car, and we'll circle to this car here in a second because there's something you mentioned in your show. that I just want to point to and make an argument of. And of course, I could be wrong because I don't have all the context. But as you can see, there's a lot of activity going around in this common areas. Basically, is what I'm trying to point out. And so in my kind of thing of red flags, what are the odds that at the time that this kid goes missing, you have all these events going on with the lights and this possible car, maybe, even though maybe if it has nothing to do with it, but just, I don't know what that is. That's so weird. I'll just beep come up. But it says, so anyway, just kind of your totality of the red flags in that area. I mean, I know we've kind of talked about it. I don't know if there's anything you want to, speak on with that.
I mean, there's all sorts of red flags in the case. I think it is clear that there's criminal activity involved here, I believe, because he's gone. And I think he would have had to have help being gone. Also, you combine that with the FBI reward, which I've commented before about, that you have to do what we call an EC, or an electronic communication, and you have to write up and justify what this reward is going to do for you, why you think that this would help in your case. If I were writing this and these are true facts, I would want to be able to articulate that, listen, we think there's more than one person that knows what happened to him. We think there would be other people that saw it on the peripheral, and we think that a reward like this could incite somebody to cooperate at this point. And so you want to articulate. I don't know what their sets of facts are that they used. I'm just throwing that out there as something that might be convincing. Sure. But there's something that they were able to throw out to justify the FBI setting aside that $50,000. Normally, in regular missing persons cases, when you see a reward offered, it's because the family members or friends are truly offering those rewards.
Yeah.
But the FBI is the face of that, but the money isn't coming from the FBI. I believe this is not that case. I think this is the case of the case agent asking for case funds to get a reward, which is another avenue you can use. If they did a thorough search of everything and he's not there, somebody took him. Somebody helped him get out of there.
Right.
And he's 15 and he's autistic. So his ability to consent, to be a voluntary runaway kind of goes out the window from a law enforcement perspective. So these are certainly strong red flags that we have a criminal investigation. If you look at what the Uvalde group said, they came in to help search and they left, and they sent out a statement and they said, we left because we were notified that this is a criminal case now. So they left.
Why use resources when you have so many missing people out there that you can put your resources that you might have results that you can find somebody, but in this case, with it being criminal, that totally makes sense. And it's so funny you started talking about the reward because I just wanted to bring that up. I know you've talked about it, but I just kind of remind people on August 26th, this was the 6 months since he went missing. And here we are almost on the, a year away from the anniversary, which is just, I can't believe it. But here is the official TBI. And here is where they mention the FBI Memphis field office says they put up a reward for $50,000. And in that, it says that they're looking for information leading to the location and return of Sebastian. And most importantly, or to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Sebastian Rogers' disappearance. To me, according to Chris Proudfoot, that's pretty black and white. Now, I know you talked about how they wouldn't put out this unless they thought it was fruitful. Your thoughts on that since you've last talked about that? I know you kind of already talked about it, but anything you wanted to add on this for
The only other thing I would add is when your case is vibrant with leads that are credible and you've got a lot of things you're working on, that is not when you post a reward. Because you're already drinking from a fire hose early on with trying to manage a two-pronged investigation. One is the search part and the other is the investigative part. So you're managing all of this, and then at the point when things start to die down and no longer are you getting credible tips and it starts going to almost cold, that's when it's a great time to do a reward. So I just wanted to mention that this is two-pronged why they're doing it. And one is because I believe things were starting to go cold. And when I say cold, I don't want to intimate that means nobody's working.
That nobody's working on it. Yeah, they're still
working on it. But if you don't have anything to investigate,
sure,
work on it. So it usually will ramp up other people, and then possibly, you get somebody that really does have the information that comes forward.
Yeah. God, we almost have 4,000 people in here. And let me just remind you, we still have a little bit of time left, hopefully. But I just want to remind you, she's live too. And I have the link, and if my mods can, put that link of her channel in the chat, because, a lot of people have two devices, and you can, it's a win-win because Jennifer does such an amazing job. And again, I am still kind of just, it's a surreal moment for me to be speaking with you. So we'll press on here so I can get as many questions in as I can. So, all right. One thing, and I tried to shorten this, but this is one thing I found very interesting. I've tried to stick with mainly evidence. Well, obviously interviews, in my opinion, is evidence. I don't, but I just put a few clips. I tried to get them in chronological order. I shortened them down, but this is Katie kind of talking about that morning. And then there's a part where Chris kind of comes in, and it's a consistent thing that he does that I just want to play. And I know it's been talked about, but I kind of like to get your thoughts on it. So let me play this. I think it's 3 to 4 interviews. They're real short.
Great.
Maybe. There we go.
There we go.
In the living room.
I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes. About 3 minutes in, give or take, I was on the phone with my husband. I said, I can't find him. He said, what do you mean you can't find him? I said, he's not in the house.
Now, there's something that I've noticed, and it could be something I'm just overlooking at. Again, I try to look at all sides. But I noticed there's a couple of interviews where she tells that morning story, right? She gets to the 3-way call. She exhales, and then Chris takes over. I find it very interesting.
And so at that point, is that when you call 911, or what's going through your mind?
While we were on the phone, and I was like, is he on the other side of the bed? The normal places he may be in the house, and he wasn't. So I was like, okay, well, hold on a minute. And immediately after that, we called the sheriff's department and made the report.
I ran all over the house, outside, inside. I looked in every closet.
Within minutes, they were here. They responded within minutes, and here we go.
So you said...
And that statement right there, here we go. Did you catch that? Let me just play this. I find this very interesting.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. And immediately after that, we called the sheriff's department and made the report.
I ran all over the house, outside, inside. I looked in every closet.
Within minutes, they were here. They responded within minutes, and here we go.
Your thoughts on that statement? I know I want to try to get to the bigger picture, but it's like, to me, in my opinion, if there was nefarious activity on inside, it's like they were preparing for this, and here's him saying, well, here we go. We've, just speculating, not saying that this is what happened, but it's such a weird statement.
There's a lot of weird statements.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are concerning. There's a lot of red flags, but I always caution people because everybody responds differently.
Sure.
And let's just face it. There is no love lost between Chris Proudfoot and Sebastian Rogers. I mean, to him. And so I think what we see more than anything from Chris is he just doesn't care. That's how I interpret it. This is just interpretation. And so I think a lot of his odd statements and weird statements and angry statements and really talking about, instead of saying, normal parents, I hate to say normal parents, but the majority of parents who have missing children are, what can we do? Please, I need you all to be looking. Can you please all put flyers out? It's always about the child and finding.
Yes.
It's not about, what we've seen throughout this entire case. And so it's really, I've said it from the beginning, it's disconcerting. And I think a lot of Katie's answers and things she's done are disconcerting. But do you have the one where she laughs?
Oh my God, that's funny. I cut that out because I wanted to try. I do have it, but
I mean, it was almost like she was acting, and then she looks at him and goes,
yeah. Oh yeah, I have it. Yeah,
that's what it is. It's like, oh, and the whole this, and then
yeah.
It's very
and that is in this interview. It's the first question she asks. But I shortened it down for time. But yeah,
I mean, I could go over and over all the issues with things she said. Somebody in my chat wrote words to the effect, this was on the other live, that, she's always been consistent. Well, that's just, I believe, inaccurate. And I'll give you a couple examples. One example was about the noise she heard. It started out a noise, and then it was a thud, and then, I heard a loud thud or loud noise. So all of that, and remember early on, she never even talked about that.
No.
And then her response to it also changed. Hey, bud. She starts realizing, to me,
I don't know what you're doing in there, but you knocked that off.
Come on. And then I think, and then compared to the first time, so whenever you see a story that's of this magnitude, talking about the last time you heard your son, you typically are going to remember those details.
Oh, that would be vivid. I would think vivid.
And they're linear. In other words, they're not scattered. They're in a line. When people tell the truth, it's easy to follow them.
Sure.
When you start seeing that shotgun, then you're like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen that recently.
Yeah.
But in any event, she wasn't linear. And that's one example, I think, that was very problematic. And then the other one had to do with the belt. And I don't remember this, but on Nancy Grace, she asked Chris Proudfoot the question, but Katie Proudfoot answers. And then Nancy says, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah. Chris.
And I want Chris to answer. But Katie, before that, she blurts out, oh, this was years ago. Well, we know that's not true. So most people who care about finding their child, they're not concerned about lying, protecting their reputations. I always say a perfect example are the Petitos and the Schmidts. Oh my gosh. I mean, we just fell in love with them for being the great parents that came together to find their child, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing the antithesis of all of that in this case.
So before we move on, so I helped with the Dylan Rounds case. That's where I kind of, I wasn't fully in it, I helped here and there, but I did get to work with EquiSearch. But one thing, go ahead. It's kind of a similar situation where you have two parents that have been divorced right? So they've split up and they've kind of moved on. And it, from what I heard, it was a pretty ugly, because sometimes they get ugly, right? Anyway, besides the point, when it came to looking for Dylan Rounds, those two were together. And on top of that, Candace Cooley, the mother of Dylan Rounds, there was mad talk about her in the beginning on some certain YouTube channels. And you know what she did? She went on that biggest YouTube channel at the time that was talking the biggest crap, that had a fake PI, and they squashed it. She answered the questions, and then she started going on there regularly. And then I had her on my show as well, trying to spread information and everything. Anyway, long story short is that even though the parents were divorced, and I heard, allegedly it was pretty bad, you see them together because there's one goal. Now, I don't see that in this. So we'll move on from that. But yeah. Okay, so like I said, there's two more interviews, but basically the point in this clip that I'm playing here is we'll see Katie talk about the morning, and then Chris, second that three-way call comes, he's there.
So you said
they responded within minutes, and here we go.
So you said
A little later in the evening, I myself went to bed, and when I went to wake him up for school, he wasn't here.
Between the hours of 12 and 6, he has basically vanished. Walked out of the house, the door was locked, and gone.
He didn't take a phone. None of his shoes are missing.
Now, you told me that night that, now, Chris, you were at work. You were out of town at work,
Yes, ma'am.
so you were not even home.
Correct, ma'am.
And Mom.
So right here, she's almost doing that Nancy Grace thing where she's like, Mom, speaking to you.
You fell asleep on the couch about 10 o'clock, but you said that Sebastian went to bed at 9 p.m., and then you got up off the couch and you went to bed, and you said that was around midnight.
Midnight.
And nothing was unusual at that point. Everything seemed okay.
There's actually a piece of, so to make something very crystal clear, so that way there's transparency across the board. Me and the mom were on the phone at 9:43 or 9:46 in the evening. We stayed on the phone for quite some time. The call logs have been verified by all the police departments, TBI included. We stayed on the phone. It was very lengthy. Mom did slightly start falling asleep while she was on the couch. I had said, hey, you need to wake up, put the dogs up, go to bed. Now, mind you, that was right around midnight, just before midnight or right around midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So then Mom does go to bed and wakes up early in the morning to go wake her son up, get him ready for school. And now we have a worried mom who can't find her son in the house. Mom made an effort to look and search several times. Mom has called me at the time and asked me, she was like, I can't find him. I was like, do what? She goes, yeah, I cannot find him. I said, well, hang on. I made the phone call and reported it to the sheriff's department because that's what we're supposed to do. And within 10 minutes, the sheriffs were dispatched to the location.
So there, he almost just goes right into it. Before she even gets to the morning, he, transparency across the board. Now I'm going to go back and tell you, 9:43, 9:46, kind of trying to put a timeline out there and an alibi. And maybe it's true, but I just find it interesting that here he just takes over, not even before she gets to the morning. Now, to argue both sides, it appears that she's emotional. So, again, I'm just trying to be fair with both sides. Maybe she's just too emotional to talk at that point. But again, you have Chris now kind of taking over. He's very, when you listen to it, he's very detailed about the timeline the night before, especially with him. And then when it comes to that morning, it just gets very vague. She's kind of looking for him. No time frame really. And then we move on. Any thoughts? I got one more clip to finalize this.
I think the big problem with that whole thing is that's all hearsay. I mean, the person that should have answered that question was the person that was there. That was just him recounting what she had told him.
Yeah.
Period. He wasn't there. So, and like you said, she was obviously emotional. I mean, she should have been. And,
sure.
She hadn't been on air. I don't think she's ever been on air past the new, there were, the podcast early on, which is a whole nother issue that I've never understood is, as parents, typically the first thing you want to do once you get yourself collected is you want to go on mainstream media.
Yeah.
And usually they're coming after you. And you just put your story, not your story. You want to put his story. Please look for this child. Please, please, please.
Yep.
That didn't happen. I mean, Chronicles of Olivia. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about her. She was also involved in the Koberger case and did a good interview. It's not about that, but compared to what ABC News or NBC News or your local affiliates are going to get out there, it's a joke.
Did you know the first local interview they did, from what I understand, was I think day 7 or day 8, and that was the day that they were searching the landfill. Was that on purpose?
That's right. It was garnering more attention by that point.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And then again, it's just all I can call them they're just red flags. But by the same token, law enforcement says they have information that he was alive on the 26th. And I think that's going to be video of like leaving. And then again, these locks, I wonder if they're the key to anything. I don't know. But Chris, it just gives me great pause and makes me think that they must have something that shows he left.
Interesting. Okay. So let's see how much. So here's Chronicles of Olivia. I'm going to play just a small clip because I know we're almost hitting the 2-hour mark, and I
looked through the house for him because it was typical for him to get up and come and rummage for snacks and things like that. And he likes to dip behind the, walls and watch, and then he comes out after I come back and he likes to scare me. But, after I looked, and I mean, mind you, all of this took place in like 1 minute flat. But I didn't see him in his room. I looked all over. I ran through the whole house. I looked out all the doors and windows, and I was like hollering his name. And I picked up the phone and I called my husband, and I said, I can't find him. And he said, what do you mean? I said, he's not in this effing house. I can't find our son. And I jumped in my car and I drove around the neighborhood, and I drove over by the school, and he's already at this point I was like hysterical, and I was crying and I was screaming, and he was like three-wayed law enforcement and was telling them like our son is missing and we don't know what's going on, and he was like, go back to the house, they're on their way. And I drove back to the house, and 20 days later.
And there's that exhale again that I was talking about, where she gets to that story, the three-way call. And I had more interviews, but I wanted to shorten them down. But there's a few more where it's kind of similar, where she gets to that point. Not all of them are exhales, but there's kind of a pattern where she gets to that point, three-way call. Chris then takes over, which, again, Chris is, 3 hours away. Why is he now talking? I mean, I understand they're doing the three-way and he's talking to sheriff, but then from there he just takes over, which I find very odd.
Anytime you're looking at these interviews with her, the problem is, again, I hate to keep saying this, but you expect a chronological linear pattern of recounting fact.
Yep.
People tell the truth. It's so easy.
I woke up. I checked his bedroom for 5 minutes. Then I went to the car at like 6:15. Yeah.
But then it's almost like confused, and then,
A little scrambled.
yeah,
Yeah.
just a little confusion. And that's just, in my opinion, that's unusual. But again, it's so hard to tell sometimes what somebody might be with their motive.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, we just asked that. Okay, I'll just quickly. I know you addressed this, but I feel like we should address this because I know this has been a big topic, and you actually mentioned a date, which I thought was very interesting. So, could you please just explain to us about Green Hoodie Lady?
Right.
Yeah.
So Green Hoodie Lady comes in on the night of the 25th to the Texas Roadhouse. And she comes in and she goes, it's a she, and goes pretty much straight to the bathroom.
Okay.
Goes into the bathroom and then comes back out and does not do anything in terms of ordering or anything else. So just a little unusual, not saying that people don't run into the Texas Roadhouse just to use the bathroom. I think usually they go to gas stations. You don't want to wade and wander through people, but then you can also see the meandering. So she looked suspicious, but law enforcement did not interview her until after At Night Investigations Dog, that crew got their hands on this video, which they sent me right away. And I kept it underneath. I did not expose it. I felt it was theirs to expose since they were the ones that got their hands.
Got it. Yeah.
So that's just how I am. If you give me something and say, do not do this, I'm not going to. I mean, my word is my everything.
Sure.
So in any event, there were a lot of things I saw in the video. I was surprised. I'm just going to be honest. I'm not trying to armchair quarterback, but I was very much surprised that law enforcement, when they first saw this, didn't go out and interview Green Hoodie because of her odd actions. But I think the reason they didn't was because they knew about the dash cam video. They knew he had made it home, and they saw him, I think, on the 26th. And so they thought it was unrelated, but I would have still interviewed just me, because it was odd. Like, I want to see everything, because what if it was somebody that surveilled them?
That's what I've always said. It could have been an outside job. There's always, there's any possibility.
It's possible, and picked up on him there. And so to me, anybody and everybody that was out of order, not acting right, I would have conducted so many interviews at the Texas Roadhouse. That's just how I conduct things. But the other thing is, they didn't get a huge FBI contingent. When I say a huge FBI contingent, it wasn't like 62 agents that happened with Koberger, right?
Oh, sure.
They didn't have that manpower. But I can tell you, very likely the FBI would have been able to give additional manpower for such interviews. So I never really understood why they did it so late, because when they did it not because At Night and Dog told them to. They did it, I believe, because they said, wow, this does look a little weird. Let me just make sure we run this down. And it ended up being a woman that lived, I believe, by herself. Don't hold me to that, but that's what I believe, in kind of a little bit of a kind of a rundown place. But she wasn't homeless or anything. And it was completely unrelated, according to law enforcement.
Interesting. Okay, because there's trying to make a connection between, I think, Chris Proudfoot's stepsister or something like that. And I even looked at kind of like some images. I was going to do a show about that, or part of a show anyway, kind of showing what images I could find of her, and showing, it doesn't quite match. And this lady that they're claiming died of cancer, and I think, the stature's a little different. And yeah.
I mean, you were on the right track, because I know initially when they looked at that footage, they genuinely thought it was a relative of the Proudfoots.
Oh.
You were on. I don't know what rumor you heard. I don't know why you knew that. But it was definitely, they were very sure that it was actually a relative of particularly Katie.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. And they did so much work. And then of course, law enforcement reinforced in a message, like that's their last messaging. That was in print saying not involved. And then I have other information. It's 100% not involved, Green Hoodie.
Interesting. Because that helps, because then we can focus on other things. And I know there's still going to be some that, because especially what they're kind of connected to with Chris Proudfoot, it'd be like, oh my gosh, this is huge. This is the connection we've been looking for. And, and of course I looked into it, because, you got to look into everything, but yeah. So.
Yeah, but you had good information in terms of the original thought process, but it just ended up ferreting out not to be involved. I know that disappoints some people, but it really shouldn't disappoint us, because
whether you crossed it off.
Yeah, exactly. You start out with everything in the kitchen sink, and now you can go, nope, 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 nope. Now where are we?
Sure. Yeah. Devote our time to other things. So,
and one of the other things that I'm really looking forward from you and Pinchu, looking forward to, is making sense of the two flashlights in terms of a 3D modeling, so we can really determine where they fit in that area. That to me is I really want to see that.
We are, maybe I should mention this after the show, but I don't think it's a big deal. But we have an amazing community, and people are on my behalf. I mean, I didn't ask for this or anything, but because I do have sources that live nearby, but some other people that also live in Hendersonville, they're going to try to reach out, not going to the homes or any of these people, but they're going to write some letters and see if they can get me some footage. Because again, I'd be happy to help. More eyes the better, in my opinion.
So true. Chris, you might not know this, but the whole reason the FBI Most Wanted poster started, I think it's over, I want to say, I don't know, decades and decades and decades ago. And it all started with a case that they couldn't solve. And they said, oh my gosh, somebody had the brilliant idea. We've got to get the public involved. And the Bureau's mantra is really to get the public involved when it comes to things like this. Did anybody see anything at this time, this car, this person? So, and same with this video footage, it gives me pause as to, I just hope all of this has been really thoroughly reviewed. I have to believe it has. That's a lot of man hours.
Sure. Yeah. And then, like you said, as things go on and it kind of gets not necessarily cold, but you lose the team, you don't have this big task force that's working on it. Now you have like an agent maybe, or, a few people, depending, I guess, how that works. But so now you've narrowed down, your resources to be able to go and look at this, where you have tons of people in the public that have, tons of experience. I'm claiming I'm an expert or anything, but, I've worked with video and understand it, and, but moving on, it'd be nice to, help with the footage. If, they're stuck with something, it would be amazing. So we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I have like maybe two main things we can go over. Do you have time for that?
Yeah, let's get those knocked out.
Okay. All right. I just want to go back and talk about what you mentioned about the two cars and how they were confirmed, right? because allegedly there was 2 cars that night. One was at 258, which is the car I'm interested in. And then there was the one at 330, which is the Uber car, which I'm not interested in. Now, from my sources, I had heard that from a long time ago. The only thing was they were off. They thought it was at 5:30, but I think they probably misspoke because of the garbage truck, and I think the timelines got mixed up. Anyway, so you said that this car has been confirmed, right? That this is it has been identified or whatever, right? But it's at 258, right?
Well, I'm going to be very specific here.
Okay, and be careful. I want to get you. If there's anything.
No. I want to make sure I'm clear because I like to source everything.
Sure.
A lot of times, because I've covered a lot of this, it's in my previous video where I source it or on Twitter. But on this, I want to be very clear.
Sure.
So on this vehicle, sourcing it from one, again, if we're to believe the veracity, Steve Fisher says he knows who drove that car.
Yep.
And that he believes that car is associated with the neighborhood, but kind of in and out. I don't know exactly what that means. To me, usually that means they're affiliated with somebody at the house.
A family member, friend, a girlfriend, boyfriend.
Yeah.
Sure.
Kid, coming back from college, whatever. They go in and out. That's what Steve Fisher said. Then from another source, and I don't want to even use the word sources, from information I have that I think is very reliable, that apparently all the cars have been accounted for and the people have been interviewed because they're not foreign to the neighborhood.
Gotcha.
And so, in other words, they've been talked to. So it leads me, I guess, for me, I've been running with the hypothesis that the people with the lights were involved with all of that. I think Sebastian would have been either led, taken, picked up to that construction site where then a car was, and then they left. This is just a hypothesis. I don't know if it's right, but based on what we have, which is minimal compared to law enforcement. What do you think, Chris?
Okay, so I'm just going to kind of quarterback off what you said earlier. So this kind of confirms, in my opinion, and let me know if I'm wrong. And anyway, I've maybe if we have a chance to talk after the show, I could share a few things with you that I've heard. Let me get this. Okay, so again, there's 2 cars that we know that were there, right? We just talked about them. One at 258. Now, you claim from your sources that this has been confirmed. We're not going to worry about the Uber driver, but let's just keep in mind we only had 2 vehicles, right, that we know of, and around 3 a.m.
Correct.
So if that is confirmed to be 3 a.m., then what makes this even more wild to me is, So let me blow this up. So remember that this is stuck at 311, right? But if this is the car, right?
Previous thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and the date is wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, so everything's stuck. But if we know that there was 2 cars, we know the Uber driver only drove up Kellen, picked up the guy, and came back, and that's after 3:30, or around 3:30. But at 3 a.m., then we have this vehicle. Doesn't that kind of confirm? Now, I'm not saying this is a nefarious car or anything, but would that not then confirm that this is the 3 a.m. car? In just hypotheses here. And if that's true, what are the odds this car is sitting on Stafford when we have the mysterious lights going on? Does that make sense?
Oh, no, I agree with you. I mean, the timing of it all, we've got 2 flashlights. We've got this light that you believe, why I just saw it earlier, that the lights go on. I mean, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, it's a car.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I see exactly what your point is. The point of when you add up the lights, when you add up the car, when you add up the timing. But I got to tell you, I feel like I can't firmly say unless I talked and interviewed myself, the person who had the video with the lights in it, the flash, unless I put not through Nick Barris or anybody else, but if I could interview them, then I would feel confident that I would know when those flashlights were moving around. My point is, they're relevant no matter what time it is.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's midnight. And by the way, don't you find it interesting that Chris is very adamant about she went to bed about midnight? Isn't that when he was walking out a door?
That's so funny. One of my extra questions that I had for you was this one here. Because, I always prepare a lot. And so, where is it? Right here. Well, there's the thud. That was the other thing I was going to mention. Right here. Ooh.
Let me comment on that while you're looking on that thud. And I'm just, again, possibilities. Whenever you have people in cases talk about things that are kind of random and that all of a sudden come to light, right? First it was he went to bed, then it was a noise, then it was a loud noise, then it was a thud. What kind of noise? Oh, it's a thud. Sometimes that is to explain the later consequence that happened with something that night. In other words, let's say if they were bludgeoned to death, then later you go back and you say, I knew I heard a thud. Somebody must have blah, or he must have fallen and then walked out.
There was an accident.
It's an accident.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be. So, and then it also begs the question, we know about medication he was given, right? I mean, that Seth confirmed. And if he was on sleeping pills and other medication, how does that intertwine? And could he have been accidentally dosed and then fallen out of the bed? And that was the thud. But it all brings me back to this one thing, Chris, and that is law enforcement said he was alive essentially on the 26th. So if that's the case, to me, this was not inside from the standpoint of her doing anything. Was she involved with the people who did?
Yeah.
That's
a great point.
That's the question.
Yeah, because I again, one of my just extra questions was because he had that fluid, I think, on the left side. Oh God, I just cut you off. I'm sorry. He had that fluid on, I think, on the left side of his brain where, if he did fall on his head, he could cause a fatal, unfortunately, a fatal accident. And, with the thud, and somebody mentioned foreshadowing, was an accident. But then you make a great point, if his proof of life on the next day, then, but yeah, that's a great point.
And that's, Chris, I've almost moved away from that. I mean, I've moved away. Let me be clear. I've moved away from something happening in that house. That combined with the fact that they didn't do luminol. I've listened to all the interviews. They did not do luminol. And if they thought that this was a blunt object, they would have done luminol. They did no fingerprinting. And you might say, well, Jen, of course, you're just going to have those three basically with fingerprints. But where are those fingerprints? Are they holding onto a door frame? Are they gripping something? Are they holding onto a bedpost? So in my view, if you think something nefarious happened in that house, that all would have been done, and it wasn't. And the 26 sighting, the change to the Amber Alert, all this tells me somebody, I think, took Sebastian. Is it somebody related to the Proudfoots? We don't know. But somebody took that boy.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but I want to make sure I get this in. So
No.
the whole flashlight tag thing to me is so ridiculous. And this came from Creepy Pasta. So there's a story. I haven't read it, but it's called Flashlight Tag. It gets really dark. I'll have to read it, but from my understanding, somebody posted this on Reddit, and then people ran with it with Seth, being flashlight tag. And let me see, do I got a screenshot of the front of the home? But this is the thing: is he only had one bedroom window, which was facing the front. You had a camera that's facing his house. Now, of course, it is a Ring camera, mind you. Oh gosh, did I cut it out? I might have. I think I did. But I would think if you're going to do flashlight tag, you would have to get his attention through the window, the windows in the front. Of course, yes, the lighting's not the best, but they have the garage lights on the left. So if he goes left, to me, I think it's a good possibility you're going to see him. And then there's some landscape lights that she talks about, which would be probably by his bedroom window or around pretty close. I don't know how much they're illuminated because right now, all I have is a garbage truck blocking the house. And then there's a big light on the right. So anyway, my main point is if he's going to be doing flashlight tag, you think somebody's got to come up to that window. They would have seen that on the dash cam, or I keep saying dash cam, the Ring camera, in my opinion.
Chris,
if you're trying to get somebody's attention,
it's Occam's razor. Now you have a kid that has to sneak out of his house. He goes there. He has to get his attention. They have to line it all up. Then they have to go out, and then they're playing tag at 3 a.m. when it's freezing outside. It is so preposterous. In my opinion, it's not Occam's razor when you start getting into these crazy conspiratorial things. Not you, I mean, generally people.
Yeah.
It just virtually almost never is the case. But I did want to bring up something that I did read, which I thought was really interesting. Not that I think that necessarily happened in this case, but are you aware of people that basically swap kids?
Yes.
That I find interesting, and in a lot of states, I mean, they say it's not illegal, I don't know, but I don't like my kid. So now you're on a, almost like a kid swap. And then they say, well, I want a 10-year-old. And all the stories I've heard, it's absolutely horrible in terms of, kids that are in families of 8 and they're all being sexually abused. Right? Because in these kid swap things or it's just sick. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that Katie and Chris would go to those links to do some sort of kid swap. And I think somebody would have come out and said, yeah, I was they contacted me about the kid swap. Do you know what I mean? It's not
the more people involved, the more likely somebody's going to say something. Or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that I do believe that happens. I think nefarious, horrible things happen, but I don't know of any proof that anything like that happened with Sebastian. But I think it was just worth a mention because I know it's been mentioned, just like the flashlight tag.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So we're just 8 minutes over 2 hours. I usually try to go for 90 minutes, but God, such an honor to have Jennifer on here. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. Of course, I would, of course, I would love to ask you so much more. But anything else you want to add?
No, Chris, I just want to say great job with all your everything you do. I think that the total getting in the weeds and trying to just help people understand. People have connected with Sebastian Rogers, wholeheartedly. There is truly a Sebastian's army. And who wouldn't? I mean, look at his big smile. I think all of us also feel very sorry for what I believe is abuses that he suffered, that we know of. I mean, abuses that we know of that I won't even get into.
Yeah.
And then the other lesser type of abuses, we're all worried about him. And those lights are going to be important, I believe. And I think that I just hope they can solve this, and I hope we don't end up with a Summer Wells number 2.
No. Yeah, I don't want to go through that again. I quit that case very early on because I saw how toxic it was getting, sadly. And it just got too much away from Summer Wells. And it's such a shame. And I don't want to see this happen again. And I feel like in this day and age with geofencing, it's surveillance footage. I mean, oh my God, I just got sent all the addresses that have video footage. Because like I said, I have some sources. And it's just about every other house had surveillance. Now, what is it, like 1080p surveillance, not everybody's going to have the same, and same view, but the amount of cameras on these 2 roads blows my mind that there's just no way he's not spotted just kind of wandering around, in my opinion.
And I think that he might have been on the 26th. I think that that's all we can go with, for them saying the 26th was the last sighting and not looking closer at the parents early on. But I just hope whoever was responsible for taking him and luring him, because I still strongly believe this isn't a random. This is somebody that he had a connection with in some way. He's not going to just get up in the middle. He was lured.
Sure.
And so I just hope, Chris, that whoever did this, that he's okay, that he's alive.
Yeah, that's what I say all the time. I always speculate, abduction and not think about the M word. I'm always, and just hopefully he's out there with extended family or, or whatever, and that hopefully I tell some of my sources, we just got to keep squeezing and put pressure, and then something, just all it takes is one thing to break, in the case, that one little clue that maybe they need.
Yeah, absolutely. And keeping his face up there and his name out there, and trying to keep some positivity and cohesiveness with everybody's efforts. It's driven me crazy when I see some of these creators are so ugly. But anyway, thank you to your mods, and thank you to my mods, and for everybody who tuned in.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much, Jennifer. I would love to share a few things with you. I don't know if you have time tonight or another day, but because I know you've already done 2 lives, but I would love to kind of share some stuff with you privately, just because I have some sources that would love to, just to help you, because I know you've got your stuff, and maybe anything that I can share maybe can help you as well.
I would absolutely love that, Chris. Let's try to touch base tomorrow.
Sure.
That would be amazing. And
that'd be awesome.
All right. To everybody. Bye.
All right. Thank you to everybody. Of course, shout out to the mods, Jennifer mods, my mods. And then I'm sorry, I wish I could have gotten to everybody's donations and stuff, but it's Jennifer. I mean, how often do you get to interview somebody with her credentials? So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.